Hey everybody, welcome to Away Games. We've been gone a bit, but we're still here. Hi, it's Kevin McCaffrey, and there's Adam Mamawala. How are you, Adam?
Well, I mean, we've been gone, but I guess you could just say we've been doing the same thing that Jed Hoyer is doing, which is nothing at all. So in that
We
way, we've been doing something.
yeah,
We've existed in the world.
exactly. We've been waiting for the market to sort itself out as to when they need an episode from us, when they need us to
Right.
appear. And we're going to take the scraps of your time. Once
hmm
you've chosen all the better choices that exist out there, then we'll take whatever's left. You know, we're a
Yeah.
couple of Hoyers over here.
But you know what? We're the difference is we are a quintessential small market podcast. We are the
That's true.
Royals of Cubs podcast.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not really fair to hold us to the same standard.
No, exactly. And as the Royals of the Cubs podcast, I suppose we should have released a Michael Wacha-sized episode at this point,
Yeah.
as they signed Wacha and a couple other people, which, whatever, good for them. The Cubs are still the only team. Let's tell you what we're doing. We're doing an off-season check-in, and it shouldn't take too long. And then
Yeah.
next week, we will be dropping our season review podcast. We're going to look back on the season that was at the end of at the end of the year on the Gregorian calendar. The
hmm
baseball calendar is already done, obviously, but look back at what the hell happened and look at our season preview and our picks and stuff. So that's next week. But this week, we're just talking about where we are in this offseason right now. And I guess I think a lot of people, as we record this on December 19th, know that the Cubs are one of 4 or 5 teams, I think, that have spent $0 on major league players at this point. And
hmm
technically, the Yankees are on that list too, because it's free agent stuff, but they traded for Juan Soto.
Right. Yeah, I mean, much as we said in 2018, where we didn't want it to be, or this, off season after
Mhm.
2018, where we didn't want it to be the Daniel Descalso off season. Let's have it not be the Jorge Alfaro off season.
Yeah, I guess we have to say that, and that, you know what? Fine. Jorge Alfaro was
Sure.
once a top 100 prospect. He's a catcher with a very strong throwing arm, a lot of raw power, and had a good year in 2019. And, and since then, he has not done almost anything offensively. But he has now been signed by the Cubs to a minor league contract, so he's going to be basically starting the year at AAA. So, you know,
Right.
once you go beyond Gomes and beyond Amaya, Alfaro will be sort of on the list for first man up after that.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
that's
mean, I don't know. Where do we want to start? Do we want to start
no
with like
Tani.
who? Yeah, no Tani, I think is probably a good place to start. I feel dumb now, but I had deluded myself into thinking that the Cubs would be in play for Ohtani or Soto, and it feels clear to me now that that was never really the case. But maybe that's not a fair way to describe the whole Ohtani situation. I think maybe nobody was really in the chase other than the Dodgers.
Yeah, so if you're a very casual baseball if you're a casual baseball person or even just a baseball fan that has enough other interests, so you're not really that tuned in the off season to catch you up. Basically, Shohei Ohtani signed with the Dodgers for 10 years, 700 million, but I believe it's 97% of the money is deferred. 68
Yeah.
million each year is deferred until after those 10 years. So he's basically getting paid a base salary. What the Dodgers are actually paying him in real money is $2 million per year. And the thing that is the most frustrating about this, and I guess we'll see where your head's at on this, but the because it's measured in real value of the money today,
hmm
so deferred money is worth less than present money. So
Right.
the real value
Thanks,
of a
Biden.
thanks Biden. Yes, again, Sleepy Joe coming in here and fucking up our shit. So it's closer to 10 years, 460 million, and the actual number against the effective salary cap, the luxury tax, is closer to, I think it's like 43 million, which
Mhm.
I don't know, man. That's pretty nice if you're the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like it shouldn't be allowed, but this has been a thing forever. Like famously, Bobby Bonilla still gets $1 million from the Mets every year for
Hmm.
25 years, 30 years down the
Yeah.
line. But to your point, if it were the sort of thing where the Dodgers were like, we just don't give a shit, we're giving him 70 million a year for 10 years, all paid in full once a year, $70 million. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if a lot of teams could reasonably compete with that, but I do think that the Cubs could have done what the Dodgers did. Now, maybe they would have offered him the same thing, and he still was like, well, I live in Los Angeles already, and I would like to stay here, and I'm closer to Japan. Like, there's not a lot the Cubs can do about that, but
And the
if
Cubs are a less effective organization. At this point, they are a
Mhm.
worse organization than the Dodgers. They have less of a chance to win, and they've proven that in recent years, which is like the
it's
main selling
yeah,
point.
it's one of the biggest reasons that when everybody was getting on Wilson's case for saying that he was, happy to be part of a better organization, like, yes, it was petty, but also it's hard to make the argument that the Cardinals are not a better run organization than the Cubs.
Yeah, and like this year, the Cubs won more than the Cardinals did, but that hasn't, that hasn't been the case. And
Yeah.
generally speaking, over the years and over the entirety of of Major League Baseball's history. So yeah, it's a thing where I've seen a lot of from some of the bigger Cubs bloggers some anger at the Dodgers and yelling like this is bullshit and stuff. And I am not angry at the Dodgers. I am not angry at the Dodgers for the same reason I never hated George Steinbrenner as a fan of
Mhm.
another team, like a lot of people did, and I didn't hate the Yankees like a lot of people did. It's different for you, I think, as you grew up closer to here, uh,
Yeah.
closer to Yankee home base. So I get that, but the complaints about Steinbrenner were always like, oh, he's spending so much money on his players. And my thought, even as a child, was it, that's what I want them to do. Like, I want my owner to pay all the money, all his money,
Right.
to
Well, that's the
players.
thing. It's like the subtext of feeling that way is not saying, at least for me, it was never saying like, oh, I'm anti players getting paid money. It was
Mhm.
more like I don't feel like my team could possibly ever compete with that, so it feels inherently unfair. But what that means is like I want my team to spend that kind of money, not I don't want anyone to spend it. Like I don't think
Right.
anyone's saying like we should all be the Rays and just never pay anyone anything.
No, and it is it a perfectly fair system? It is not. But we are the Cubs, and we are one of the elite money making teams, and
Hmm.
we refuse to act like it. And that I crunched the numbers in an extremely boring way because I wanted to know if I was being a meatball about this, and like
Hmm.
I would like to be based in fact on what I'm talking about. And so I saw where the Cubs ranked in payroll every year since the Ricketts took over, and it averages 9.75. They average in terms of rank in the league. So, but
Right.
closest to 10th in the league in payroll since the Ricketts
Yeah.
have taken over, and that is unacceptable to me. To me, anywhere under where you rank in terms of bringing in money,
Hmm.
that is where you should rank. If you don't rank there or above, then your owners are not doing enough. And that is, and yeah, I mean, I guess that's the basic point for me. And when people are getting mad at the Dodgers, I'm not mad at the Dodgers. I'm mad at the Cubs. Because
Right.
it's not just the money. It's the creative thing about deferring all that money, using that loophole to sort of rig the stats in a way that it doesn't count against the CBT in the same way. When does our general manager come up with the creative thing?
Hmm.
When do we get in on the Arenado trade where the Rockies paid the Cardinals to take Nolan Arenado? Where do we get in on that?
Right.
Like there has been a number of things, and it's not just flat signing free agents, but it's the creativity around fitting higher level players onto your team and being more competitive and being smarter than the team next to you that our team has seemingly either not had the ability or interest to do.
Well, I think you were having a conversation with somebody about this on Twitter at Away Games Pod about like when is the last time that the Cubs went out and got their guy? Like
Yeah.
I guess maybe John Lester and Jason Hayward are the people that come to mind, and obviously like the Jason Hayward contract went the way that it did. But when you are a team the size of the Cubs, there's no excuse for that. Like whether
Mm-hmm.
it's via trade or just paying somebody a lot of money, the Cubs should always be one of the major players in acquiring talent like that. Like they are not the Royals, they are not the Rays. Like you don't expect a team like that to go out and sign a Shohei Ohtani. I don't even know if Vegas would have let you bet $1 on Shohei Ohtani signing with the Royals because it would have paid
Right.
you $1 million. Like that's
Yeah.
just it's not that's not how it works. But um Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. And I mean, what's the Cubs have still never signed someone to a contract 200 million or above?
No, and and it seems like if that, there were already opportunities to do that this year, right? Obviously,
Hmm.
and Shohei Ohtani at this point, like I can't, I'm not fully blaming the Cubs for not landing Shohei now, but history didn't start now. The Cubs
Hmm.
were one of the finalists. They were the only like Midwest finalist, non-West Coast finalist for Ohtani when he came through before, and along with the Dodgers, I believe the only teams that didn't have the DH at the time. So he kind of it seems like he kind of sort of considered them then.
Right.
I I don't blame them for not signing him today, but I blame everything that led up to it.
Hmm.
Like they made the choices that led them to the spot. So when you say the 200 million, it's like, okay, did they sort of have an opportunity to do that with Shohei? Maybe, kind of, maybe not. But Yamamoto, the pitcher out of Japan, the top pitcher out of Japan,
Hmm.
25 years old, seems like the Cubs aren't even getting a meeting with that guy, which would
Right.
be a 200 million plus
Hmm.
contract there. It seems like they're not even in the mix on that guy, which you can look at all these top free agent guys over the past few years, the top guys, and you can make an individual case for why the Cubs maybe didn't get into business with any of them, but it's all of them. I mean, like
Hmm.
you talk about how we were saying, like, when was the last time the Cubs got their guy, targeted the top level guy they went and got? I guess you could give them a little bit of credit for Swanson. They clearly identified him as their target, the guy they wanted the most, but that was by the industry's third or fourth shortstop of that year, and after a year where they sat out Seager and
Right.
Semien and all that too.
And if you wanted somebody that much, why wait so long? Like
Mm-hmm.
that feels a little weird to me where it's like they signed him when he ended up being the only person left, which arguably gave him more leverage than he had previously. Like
It's a
if he
great
really
point.
was your guy, go get him. Like if you have your dream college, why are you not going early decision? Like
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense to me.
I'm gonna let the college come to me. See, once they sign all the
Yeah.
other high school people out there.
Well, the problem is, and it's maybe the Cubs have been more in on more people than we've realized, and those people just have decided not to go to the Cubs. And if that's the case, then I guess that's a different conversation. But we know that that's not true for a lot of people that the Cubs should at least have expressed interest in,
Yeah.
all the way back to Bryce Harper, which we belabor here, as a lot of people do. But it is true, and it's like I'm going to make a very niche reference because I want to. You remember the film A Beautiful Mind with
Yeah,
Russell Crowe?
of
You
course.
remember how the whole premise of what he comes up with as like, a new economic theory is that they're at this bar and there's like the really hot girl and then her four friends. And he realizes like, all right, well, we can't just all go for the hot girl because if we all go for the hot girl, she's only going to pick one of us. Then we're going to go to her friends, but they're going to know that we actually wanted to be with the hot girl and they're going to be like, we don't want to be second choice. That seems like the Cubs' whole approach to baseball is like, we're just never going to go for the hot girl. We're going to go to the
Yes.
peripheral girls.
100%. It is that's not even that niche. I don't think. I mean, I think he won Best Actor, so it might have even won Best Picture. So it is that it is waiting. Like we don't. Jed Hoyer doesn't see the Cubs as hot. We're hot. God damn it. We're hot and we have money. What the fuck? Why aren't we going for the hottest people? And look, Dansby Swanson can sort of muddle this kind of
Yeah.
a comparison. He's a hot fella, but like it is.
Mhm.
That's exactly it. This is a reactive organization who just always waits for the dust to settle. Fuck that. You should be leading the charge sometimes, not
Right.
every year. Pick one that you need to get. And when we had Theo here, that happened a little bit. He went
Hmm.
out, I mean, he was very candid about it, but like John Lester came to a team that was not expected to win that year because we ponied up the money. And it's not just the money, it's also being able to sell your vision. And that is something also that Hoyer clearly cannot do with the top guys either. And how could he? Look at the results the past few years.
Right. Not to mention the fact that, we've been sold this idea of like we're not rebuilding, we're retooling, and we're gonna, trade people when we can get value for them and not let them walk for nothing, and we're gonna get all these prospects. And as I understand it, unless I'm an idiot, the point of getting top prospects is that in some cases you want to let them develop and become
Hmm.
part of your next core team, but you also are acquiring assets that you can then flip for major league ready talent. And I'm not necessarily saying the Cubs should have traded for Juan Soto, knowing that you might only get a year out of the guy and then he's gone. But if you have this depth of talent like the Cubs do in the farm system, they do have one of the best farm systems in baseball. Like, why are you sitting on your hands when you have that available to you?
Yeah, and this is a thing. It's sort of a foreshadowing of our year-end wrap-up coming next week. But a thing I said in our season preview was this team has to make a big trade with their prospects soon. I said that in last season preview, and that was before. And I think the farm system has only grown in esteem since then, but they still haven't made the deal. And we've seen Brennan Davis, who was a top 25 prospect, fall completely off the radar.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've seen that value is gone at this point. I hope he develops into something good for the Cubs, but there's no trade value there really at
Right.
this point. They didn't take advantage there. They didn't, and they haven't swung any trade of any note, and
Mm-hmm.
they've been sitting on this depth of this cache of prospects for a while now. And the offseason's not over, okay, but something has to happen sometime.
Yeah, and I understand that the fear is a, Eloy and Cease trade. You don't want to have to make those trades where then everybody's talking about how bad it looks for the next 10 years. But that's part of the risk of trading prospects is
Yeah,
just that. They are prospects. Like, yes, you might end up trading Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez for Jose Quintana, but you also might get Aramis Ramirez and Kenny Lofton for Bobby fucking Hill. All due
totally.
respect to Bobby Hill, but like
Yeah.
that's the risk that you take when you trade prospects is like you don't know, they might get hurt, they might not pan out when they get to the major leagues. And at a certain point, if you're saying that you want to win now, which it sounds like the Cubs are trying to make us believe, you need to acquire major league ready talent. This is not July of 2021 anymore. Like we're beyond that. We're heading into 2024. And if the team was that close to making the playoffs and we feel like we're a few pieces away from actually at least being good enough to win the Central. Nobody in the world is going to be as good as the Dodgers heading into this year. They
Yeah,
still might lose in the first round, but like
for
nobody
sure.
in the world is going to be that good. But you cannot tell me that going into last year and especially going into this year, the Cubs don't have the ability to create a team that is good enough to win the NL Central and have a shot in the playoffs. Like that's crazy to me.
It's insane. It's a terrible division. The Brewers have only gotten worse. We took their manager. Okay, that's cool. But the Brewers have been, there's been a lot of talk about them dealing Corbin Burns in his last year. They,
Mm-hmm.
they let Brandon Woodruff go basically because he's going to be rehabbing most this year. But that's the division winner from this division. The Cardinals were bad
Right.
last year, and they've added the pitchers they've added are maybe a little questionable, but they've added a lot of innings to that starting rotation. They brought my guy, chubby fastballs only Lance Lynn. They brought they,
Oh
they,
yeah.
they brought him back. Cal Gibson's over there now, so they've added innings over there. There, and just for a comparison, when Theo Epstein took over the Cubs, it was 2011 and the payroll was bloated and extremely untalented. He took over
Yeah.
a difficult bunch of dog shit in
Mm-hmm.
2011.
And
20,
an organization that was still like sending faxes.
yeah, exactly. And had to, great. That's a great point. And had to like fully like modernize the organization in
Mm-hmm.
in really basic ways.
Yeah.
And with new ownership too, the Ricketts were new, and even if better ownership, which I think we can say, still that it was new. It was a lot. Coming in there. So that's 2011 when he took over, the offseason 2011. And in 2015, they won 97 games, and we know what happened in 2016. Jed Hoyer took over a division winner in 2020. Took over a
Mm-hmm.
division winner in 2020 with a lot more talent on that roster, either to extend or sell off, well, whatever. The same difference between 2011 and 2015 is 2020 to 24. This is the equivalent of what Theo Epstein's 2015 was.
Mm-hmm.
Is the like how close are we to even being in the same stratosphere as an organization? I don't feel it.
Right.
And I could be wrong, but I'm not right now, at least.
Yeah,
So
and it's the point about council is well made, which is that like I was so shocked by that and excited by that when it happened, not only because I think he's a good manager, but because to me it seemed indicative of what the Cubs' intentions were, which is like you don't go out and sign a guy like Counsell and fire your beloved manager,
Mhm.
World Series hero David Ross. You wouldn't do that unless you plan to compete right now. And I still want to believe that, but it's
Mhm.
getting harder and harder. And I also like, I'll just say the name because I don't really care. Like Al Yellen wrote an article on Bleed Cubby Blue yesterday. It was basically just like holding water for ownership and saying like, everyone like chill out. It's only mid-December. Like just because the offseason hasn't been anything yet doesn't mean it won't be ultimately. And like, I don't know. I guess that's true. There's still a way to make this a good offseason, but I still think we're allowed to be pissed off that it's almost Christmas and the Cubs haven't done anything.
To react to what the reality is. This is a reactive organization, and they have not they at the very least have not been proactive about getting better outside of the manager spot, which counts as a thing. That does count, sure. But yeah, and like it's weird because I find myself frustrated reading a lot of Cubs coverage and and just being online in general and stuff, which some of that's my own fault. But I feel like there are, there's a business side of to like a lot of blogs and coverage where
Hmm.
it's sort of I'm not accusing them of dishonesty necessarily, but I understand how a slant could be towards no, please stay engaged, please keep listening
Right.
because that is my business.
Hmm.
So I understand that, but I think that leads to some of that water carrying stuff and some of that and I sort of don't mind it unless it gets patronizing, and I think I've felt that from a lot of Cubs coverage. This,
Right.
oh, you just don't understand the grand plan. You get, oh, I'm so you're flying,
Hmm.
you're acting like the off season's over. I'm not acting like the off season's over. I'm acting like every off season for the last several also existed. I'm acting like all these years count and the path to here counts, and they have shown us where their ambition lies to this point. And to this point, that is what my opinion about how this is going is based on. It's not just this offseason. Last offseason, by far the most ambitious of the Hoyer
Hmm.
era, right? Not hard to say when it began, selling off you Darvish and which was an ownership mandate. Fine, that's a big strike against them.
No,
But
but you signed Swanson, you signed Jameson Taillon, who I think
yeah,
we all were excited about at the time, and I still think that could end up being a good signing, even though
yeah,
he struggled a lot last year. Signing Bellinger, I think, obviously was a great move. Now it sucks that it sounds to me like the Cubs are like barely even in on him, and I could be wrong about that, but that's like what we seem to be getting from everything that I read, and that is crazy to me too because it's like just re-signing him would still give you the same team as last year, basically.
Sandstrom.
So yeah,
Yeah, basically
like
without yeah, it would if you sign Cody back after a really good year, it's no given that Cody is even going to replace Cody's production after the year he had. Like I mean he
yeah,
could and he could do better. Who knows? Cuz he's still young. This is a oddly young free agent with
right.
huge peaks, MVP level peaks of performance, but it seems like well, you talked about the Cubs have never given out a $200 million contract. It seems like it might take exactly that to get Cody over how many years? I
Hmm.
don't know. Let's start deferring some shit. But when you are a
Right.
reactive organization and you don't go get your guy, you're left in a position where I mean, Cody is almost the only path to getting even back to last year. You need that, and then you need
Yeah.
possibly and then I guess this is a good time to talk about who is out there, who we do still want, who we are interested in. And
Right.
Rhys Hoskins is one of those, as a big bat coming off a big injury. That might be a Cody Bellinger like 1 or 2 year deal to play first base,
Hmm.
DH. Although I just saw rumors that the Mariners might be going in on him too.
I think. I mean, I don't know what your perspective is on like what would it take at this point for you to actually feel like the Cubs did what they needed to do in the offseason, and maybe there's no way to get there because they missed out on the two
Mhm.
biggest names that we had, this offseason. But I think for me, it's like at a bare minimum, you have to re-sign Cody Bellinger. You have to go out and sign. I guess if Hoskins is who you want at first base for a couple of years, fine.
Mhm.
Um, you got to get a starting pitcher, and clearly it doesn't seem like it's going to be Yamamoto, but like go sign Jordan Montgomery or somebody like that. Try to make a trade for. I don't think the Brewers are going to trade us Corbin Burns, but like try to trade for a top level guy. Tell the White Sox we made an oopsie. We'd like Dylan Cease back. Who would you like in exchange?
Right.
And then sign some bullpen arms. And I think you can make the case that no, it's not everything that they could have done, but it is putting them in a position to win the Central, which is what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the baseline, right? Is if you don't, and this is a thing I will give a Bleacher Nation put this well, I thought, was basically like, if the Cubs are not the clear favorites to win the Central, they have failed the offseason. Mm-hmm. But yeah, yep. I fully agree with that. And like you said, there's rumors out there. I think as far as free agents go, Cody and Rhys Hoskins are the ones that have been most tied to the Cubs. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, Cleveland as a trade partner, talking about Shane Bieber, possibly.
Josh Naylor. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Matt Chapman has been brought up a lot. He's not with the Guardians, but mm-hmm. Yeah, I continue to feel like that Succession meme about the Cubs. Like, I love you, but you are not serious fucking people.
Yes, I think absolutely. They are not serious enough to this point. And, I think we've done a pretty good job talking about what hasn't happened to this point, but there's nothing else to really talk about. I mean, there's a lefty out there. Shota Imanaga is a lefty from Japan who's been very successful and is interesting too. That's a guy to possibly keep an eye out on. Mm-hmm. But you just read all these tweets where it's like, okay, Yankees signing Yamamoto would actually be good because that takes away competition for something else. We're picking up scraps. We're the beautiful mind mm-hmm. other dudes. Like it just mm-hmm. that is not who we should expect to be.
Yep. I don't know what the Cubs' catchy slogan is going to be for next year, but I'm not feeling good about it.
Look what we found.
Putting the mid and Midwest.
Yeah. Hashtag it, baby. Mid and Midwest. Yeah. So, I feel like that's a pretty good rundown.
Yeah, I think we've done what we need to do here, and you can make sure to listen next week for our recap of how the 2023 season went. There were some highs, there were some lows.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we just ended up feeling like Darnell Mooney, like it was right in our fucking laps, wasn't it?
And we kicked it away. Like really a real Mooney ass end of that year, for sure. Absolutely booted those last several games into the hands of Arizona instead of Cleveland, I guess. But thanks for listening. Away Games Pod. Let's sign some people. How about that?